Hey, what's up? This is the practice test for the Unit 4B test. Hopefully this won't take super long like they usually do, because this one's actually only 2 pages and only one of them is front and back, so that's not too bad. Okay, so just remember, just like always, the first 5 questions of our practice test are spiral review questions. So anything that we have covered in Algebra 1 is fair game. So systems of equations, inequalities, solving an equation, trying to think of some more stuff we did last year. Let's see. Exponents and radicals that we did in the last unit, all of that's fair game. So just be aware of that. We're getting to a point where, no, you cannot forget what you learned last week for this week. Everything builds, so you got to learn that. You're going to be using it in geometry next year. You'll be using it in Algebra 2 the year after that. And yeah, so my word of warning. Remember also that this is pretty much a copy and paste version of the test, of the real test, except the real test is multiple choice. So like question number 1, I might give you 3 multiple choice questions on having to name polynomials, okay? So when people say it looks nothing like it, well, no, because we have to reformat it to make sense in multiple choice. So okay, so there's my minute and a half of disclaimers, and let's just go ahead and get started. So, number 1, provide an example of each of the following. So there are multiple answers here. Like, there's a gazillion different answers. Okay, so you are going to come up with your own, or I guess we can come up with some together. I guess not really, because I've been here by myself. So, 1 second.
Teacher, please excuse this.
Okay, so, all right, so we're going to start with a quadratic trinomial. So, if you look, if it ends with nomial, that's the number of terms. So, trinomial means 3 terms, binomial means 2 terms, monomial means 1 term, and polynomial is 4 or more. Okay, so we'll start with, and then the first term tells you the highest degree or the highest exponent. So the highest exponent we can have in number 1, or in A for quadratic. Quadratic means we have an exponent of 2. Quartic means 4. Linear means 1, and cubic means 3. Okay. So we'll start, we need a quadratic trinomial. So anything like any of the polynomials we've been factoring the past couple of days. It can have a number in front of x squared, or it doesn't have to. We'll just make something up. The highest degree has to be a squared, though. We can't have anything higher than that, so we can't have a power of 5 or a power of 8 or even a power of 3. The highest thing we can have is a power of 2. So we have, let's do 3x squared plus 2x minus 257. I don't care. It can be anything. But the highest number we have, or the highest exponent we have, is a 2, and we have 1, 2, 3 terms. Okay. Quartic binomial. So we have 2 terms. The highest exponent has to be a 4. And we can have x to the 4th minus 3x to the 3rd. It's a binomial. It's got 2 terms. The highest one's a 4. Okay, I'm going to skip C. I'm going to come back to it. D, a cubic monomial. So that means 1 term. And we don't have to use x. Let's use A. And we'll do a to the 3rd. And you can put anything in front of it. Or we can just have negative 8. Let's do negative a to the 3rd. I don't know. But it's 1 term. The highest exponent's a 3. Okay, linear polynomial. This one was kind of confusing. You had to kind of think about what's the best way to do. This is one that if I have more than one x, it doesn't work. So for linear, it means I have an exponent of 1. So I could have x plus 3. But this is technically not a polynomial. Poly usually is classified as, well, there are 2 routes you can interpret this. Normally when we have polynomial, it's 4 or more. But if you think about it, all of these are polynomials. So you could interpret this to mean, okay, this is technically a polynomial. I've got x plus 3. if you want to go the 4 or more route, well, we just need some things that we can't have any more x's and we can't have any more constants because those would combine. So let's add some more variables in there so that we don't have anything with a higher exponent than 1. So we could do plus 2y minus z. So there's 4 terms. None of them have an exponent of more than 1, so that's technically linear. But you could also say, well, technically, just x plus 3 is a linear polynomial because all of these could be classified as polynomials. Typically, we usually use polynomial for more than 4. So there's a couple of different ways you can interpret this one. If that is the case on the test, it would be down to which one's linear, not necessarily, ooh, this one has 4 terms, but this one has 5 terms. It's going to be based off of whether or not it's linear. We wouldn't be that hateful to you, I promise. But this one can be interpreted a bunch of different ways. And this is one that if you argued it with me, I'd give you points on it. If you could make an argument that makes sense and is not just, I think it should be linear polynomial because I said so, as long as it's an argument that makes sense, I'm willing to give you points on it. So there you go. All right, number 2, classify the following by term and degree. So this is basically going the opposite route. All right, so let's look. My highest degree is 3, so that means it's cubic. I have 1, 2, 3 terms, so it's a trinomial. Okay, my highest degree here is 4, so that's quartic. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so I don't have anything special for 5 terms, so we're going to call it just a polynomial. Okay, so then we have on part C, it's there's no exponent, so we're going to assume it's an exponent of 1. So this is a linear, and there's only 1 term, so it's a linear monomial. And then the last one, there's 3 terms. The highest exponent is a 2, so this is a quadratic trinomial. All right, so then number 3, write each polynomial in standard form. Standard form means, and then identify the leading coefficient and the constant. So standard form means that we go from the highest to the lowest degree. Okay, highest to lowest degree. So in part A, so my highest degree is this negative 4x to the third. And then we have a positive 3x squared. Okay, my leading coefficient would be the first, the number in front of the very first term. So this is, or my very first coefficient, basically. So we have a negative 4 in front of everything. So that's my leading coefficient. And then constant would be my number without a variable. And there isn't one, so our constant is 0, because pretty much I can put a plus 0 at the end and it would not change anything. Okay, so then the next one, let's see. Our highest degree is this 2x to the fourth, followed by negative 6x cubed, followed by plus 5x squared, plus 7x minus 4. Okay, my leading coefficient is this 2. My constant is negative 4. All right, and then C, we're going to start with 7x squared plus 4x plus 10. My leading coefficient is that 7. My constant is 10. Okay. So remember, your constants are the numbers without the variable. Your leading coefficient is the very first coefficient or your very first number. But it's only your leading coefficient when it's in standard form. Okay? So in the standard form is highest degree to lowest degree. Okay. Number 4, define standard form of a polynomial. So standard form, and there's a couple of different ways you can define this. And it's a polynomial written from the term with the highest degree to the term with the lowest degree. Okay. All right, so it says provide one example and one counterexample. So an example would be, let's start with a 3x to the 4th, and then I can't have anything higher than to the 4th after this point. Minus 7x to the 3rd plus x squared minus 5. So even though I skipped an x, that's okay. Like I went from x squared straight to negative 5, that's okay. As long as I don't have like a plus 2x or something at the end. All right, a counterexample. So counterexample. So anything that's not in standard form. So let's do a 2x squared plus 3x plus 2x to the 5th minus 18x to the 3rd plus 2. I don't know. Doesn't matter. It's not in standard form. We have a 5th, a 3rd, a 2, a 1. It's all jumbled up. And just remember, it is so much easier to read if it's in order. It's easier for me to find the correct answer. It's easier for me to grade it. Your answer should be in standard form. Even if I don't tell you write it in standard form, it's 100% easier to double check your work if we're all in the same format instead of trying to search for your terms. All right, define constant. A constant is a term that does not have a variable. Okay, so an example would be something like 12. Another example could be negative. We could do negative 5. We can even, this is not recommended, but you could even do a fraction. You could do 1/2. Those are all constants. Counter examples would be, let's do 12x or negative 5y. See, I'm using the same numbers. I'm just being lazy. Or x over 2. None of those would be constants because there is a variable. All right, so the fun part, simplifying polynomial. So now we're getting into polynomial operations. So adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. I might go ahead and pause this video, stop it here, and we'll see. This might be a 3-parter instead of a 2-parter, but I'm going to stop this here. Y'all have a good evening.